Well, hey there, beautiful faces. It is great to have you back here for Chapter 2, Video 5. We're going to be talking about some scatter plots and regression lines today. So here we go. Let's go ahead and get started. Get this lined up here. Okay, so scatter plots and regression lines. So scatter plots basically are going to show whether a set of data has any sort of relationship. Okay, I know you guys have seen scatter plots before. I know you guys have dealt with them, so here we go. Okay, so we have different types of scatter plots. So sometimes we have a positive correlation when we have a scatter plot. So let's say we have our plot here and we have a bunch of dots that kind of follow this trend. Okay, we would have a positive correlation. Let's say we have a bunch of dots that somewhat go like this. After we plot them, we would have a negative correlation, and then no correlation might be something like random dots all over the place. So, for example, a positive correlation might be something like if we compare hamburgers eaten versus calories consumed. Okay? A negative correlation might be something like the amount that you work out versus your weight. Okay? As you work out more, your weight goes down. Okay? A no correlation could be something like your shoe size versus your salary. There is no correlation between those two. All right, so a line of fit can be drawn in any sort of scatter plot that has a positive or negative correlation. When we have no correlation, we can't have a line of fit. Our line of fit is just telling us the trend of the data, and it's going to help us to predict future values. So we always write it in y equals mx plus b. Okay, so we're just going to come up with an equation of a line after we make our scatter plot to predict future values. All right, so let's actually look at a full example here. So we're just going to go through this one big example, and that'll be it for the video. Okay, so what I did here is part 1 says make a scatter plot and draw in a trend line. Okay, so I started the scatter plot here just to save a little bit of time in the video, so you guys can pause it right here and get this part drawn in. So it says make a scatter plot and draw in a trend line. So what I did is I plotted 0, 2, 3, 4, 4, 5, 5, 7, 7, 9. And then I need to plot 9, 12, 10, 15, so over 10 up to 15, and 12, 14, so over to 12 up to 14. Okay, so there are my dots after making my scatter plot. Again, they don't necessarily fall on an exact line, but we can definitely see that there is a trend there. Okay, so we can definitely see that there is a positive correlation in this data, which means that we can draw in a trend line if we have a positive correlation. So to make our trend line, you might want to grab yourselves a ruler. I'm going to grab one right now. And once you have your ruler, you're going to line it up on your graph the best that you can to hit as many points as possible. Okay? The person sitting next to you might have a slightly different trend line than you. Just depends on where you choose to draw that trend line in. So I put it right there. If you notice, does it hit every point? Absolutely not. Okay, it's not going to hit every point because a scatter plot is not 100% perfect. And we'll talk about what that means in a second of when it's not completely perfect. Okay, so we want to pick 2 points on the trend line, and then we're going to find the slope. Okay, so far we've decided that this is a positive correlation. So now we need to pick 2 points that actually fell on our line. Okay, so I see this one here, and there's this one here that fell on my line. So this one would be the point 5, 7, and this one looks like it's 12, 14. So 5, 7, and 12, 14. And then find the slope. So we're going to subtract our y values and subtract our x values. And so this one actually turned out really nice where our slope is just going to be 1. Okay, so that actually ended up really nice for that one. So when we write an equation of the trend line then, we're going to go y minus our y1, so 7, equals our slope times x minus x1. This is what we did in the last video. So I distributed the 1 and then add the 7. So y equals then x plus 2. So there is the equation of my trend line. All right, so the reason why that is important to have an equation of a trend line is because now we can do what number 4 is asking, which is predict values. Once you have a equation, you can predict a different value that might fall on here. Does that necessarily mean it's exactly what's going to happen? Maybe not, but it's a good idea because we drew in a linear pattern here, okay? So if there were dots way far off the line, okay, it probably wouldn't be that good of a predictor. But because these dots are pretty close, it's actually a pretty good prediction line that we made up with. So x is 30, we want to predict y. So y equals 30 plus 2 then. So according to our graph that we came up with, if x were to equal 30, y probably will be really close to 32. All right, does that mean it's going to be exactly that? Absolutely not, because you can kind of see the pattern that's going on here. We skipped some values around with x's. Okay, these are just data points that were collected. Okay, does the line predict values well? Well, I'm going to say yes, it does, because most of our dots are close to the line. Does the line come close to most points? Well, we just answered that. So that's kind of what predicts whether it's going to be a good prediction or not. All right, and then our last thing, predict an R value. Okay, so you guys will find later on that you can actually do this R value thing or correlation value. We'll call it coefficient. On the computer. But for right now, we're just going to predict it. Okay, so R value, it's going to be positive if it's a positive relationship. It's going to be negative if it's a negative relationship. So we know that it's going to be positive. And we know that it's a pretty good prediction. Positive, good prediction. Because most of our dots are close to the line. Okay, so your R value can be anywhere between -1 and 1. If it's between 0 and 1, it is a positive correlation. If it's between -1 and 0, it's a negative correlation. So negative, negative correlation, positive, positive correlation. The closer to -1 or 1, or in other words, the bigger the decimal is, the stronger the correlation. So basically, this is a pretty strong correlation. So I'm going to say that 0.9 would be a good R value, because it's a pretty strong correlation. So it's positive, so we used a positive value, and it's strong, so I used a decimal close to 1. If I had a bunch of dots really far off my line, I would want to use an R value that's closer to 0, so like 0.5 or 0.4, okay, something like that. Okay, we can talk more about R values later on, and I can answer those questions as you need be, but that is just something that we just kind of want to have a good idea of what's going on there. But like I said, your computer will actually predict them. All right, and I'm going to leave you on this note. So here is two people talking about their marriages, and so this lady got married today, but yesterday she had 0 husbands, so today she has 1 husband. And so they're considering that a linear pattern. So he says that she should get a bulk rate on her wedding cake because next month she'll have over 4 dozen husbands. So I thought that was kind of cute. So, all right, we will see you guys next time. See you later.